It began at Northern Ohio Live magazine. I love to cook. I knew chefs knew something that we didn't know. They didn't need recipes the way we needed recipes. So I created this column, this monthly column, where I'd go to one of the finer restaurants around Cleveland and go and cook with the chef and learn how to cook side by side with the chef and do a profile of them that way. And it was fun, and I learned a lot, and it was interesting. And half these guys had gone to the CIA in Hyde Park, Culinary Institute of America. And after I'd finished my boys' school book, I was just casting around for other book ideas. And I thought, God, what if I could talk my way into the most prominent cooking school in the country and see what they say you have to know in order to be a chef? And so I did. It took a long time to talk them into it because they thought I was trying to scam a free education, which I wasn't. I wanted to tell. I didn't want to be a cook or a chef. I wanted to tell a good story, get out, and yeah, maybe I'd learn something fun along the way. And so they finally let me in. I dressed in whites. I carried a knife kit, wore a toque, and did the chopping and the mise en place and the veal stock and the hollandaise beside my fellow students. And I thought it was really cool. It was great. And it was fun, like making a consomme, clarifying stock for a consomme was like, wow, you can do so many cool things with food if you know what you're doing. This was the winter of 1996. And we lived up in Tivoli, New York, 25 miles north of the CIA in the Hudson Valley. And we were hit with a snowstorm, and the whole Hudson Valley was buried. But the CIA famously never closed. And so I called my chef, Mike Pardis, and said, Chef, I don't think I'm gonna be able to make it in. My car, I can't even see my car. I can see the side view mirrors sticking out of a mound of snow, and the roads are buried. And he said, okay. He said, but Chef, I'm taking this project seriously. You know, I'm and this book seriously, and your class seriously. I said, okay. I said, no, Chef, you got to know, I would be there if I could. And he said, Mike, I'm going to cut you off right there. You know, one of the things we're teaching these kids it's not just how to emulsify a hollandaise or clarify a consomme. It's that when you're a chef, you get there. And I said, well, I would get there if I could, but I can't. And he said, fine, Michael, you have your work, we have ours. We're chefs. We get there. We like it like that. And he hung up the phone. And I was so rattled. My heart was beating so hard. Well, long story short, I drove 25 miles through a snowstorm to make a bechamel sauce. I was so angry. I walked in there, and Pardis was right in my face. I did not mean to guilt you into coming. I said, can I still take the test? So I took the test, crushed it, and it was that day that I decided I'm going to become a cook. A chef I was interviewing at the Culinary Institute of America while I was writing that book in 1996. We were talking about, I want to know what you need to know in order to be a chef, and he was talking about, the basics. You need the fundamentals. And they looked up at his shelves, and they were just buckling under the hundreds of cookbooks. He said, see all these cookbooks? I can show you everything that's in those cookbooks in 2 pages. Would you like to see? He's a German guy, as somebody were back then. I said, yeah, I'd like to see. And so he spins around his chair, opens a metal filing cabinet, pulls out basically a sheet and a half, a grid with like 32 preparations. And they were marked off like, aspic, velouté, pie dough, hollandaise, with their corresponding numbers and with the ingredients written in there. And he'd done things like break down a hollandaise to, it was 1 pound butter, 3 yolks. And I thought, wait a minute, that's not how we learned it in Pardis's class. What about lemon juice, the main seasoning? Or what about a reduction of some sort for flavor? What about pepper? And then I thought, well, is it a hollandaise without the pepper or lemon? I said, well, it's a pretty dull sauce, but it'll be emulsified sauce. Is it a hollandaise without the yolk, without the butter? No. You don't have the same, it's not it. So I love that he had reduced all these products to their essence. I was so fascinated by it that I had a friend write them out and on a big sheet. She had a beautiful artistic script, and I titled it "A History of Cooking." And I put it above the sink where I did dishes almost nightly, and I'd stare at those ratios, and they just were endlessly fascinating to me. What a sabayon was, what a force meat was, what he's, it was just, and I thought, I've been thinking about this for 10 years. Anything that fascinates you for 10 years, I said, I got to explore this in a book. And so I did. So I wrote Ratio, the simple codes behind the craft of everyday cooking, where his is a little sloppier. I really formalized it by using all weights. So it really works no matter whether you're cooking for 2 or cooking for 20. And that was a fun book to do. I still get emails from that saying I use this book to teach. People who are just an ordinary cook say, oh, now I don't need recipes. Thank you so much. So yeah, it's been great. And so great it is that I decided to do the book of cocktail ratios, which is out in a couple of weeks.
Tell us about writing that one, if you would, a little bit.
During the pandemic, my wife and I started doing these live Instagram cocktail hours called the Friday Cocktail Hour, where we do a new cocktail every week. And we started out just filming them and posting them, and then we were doing Instagram lives. But because I was doing a new cocktail each week, and because during COVID we were so bored, the cocktail hour became an actual thing. Like, what's the cocktail going to be tonight? Let's do something new. And what I realized was how interrelated all these cocktails were. That a Negroni, gin, Campari, and sweet vermouth, if you replace the gin with bourbon, you have a Boulevardier. You take a Manhattan, 2 parts whiskey, 1 part sweet vermouth plus bitters. Put Applejack in there instead of the whiskey, and you've got a cocktail called the Star. But what are the other ones? You can do a tequila Manhattan, a Federal Distrito Federal. So I saw all these. I saw them all as ratio wheels, like the wheel on the cover of the yellow ratio wheel. And I had an illustrator do this. But basically, I tried to sell this book, and I couldn't sell it. I was sort of almost going to give up on it. But then a chef friend asked for a couple of copies of Ratio, the cooking book Ratio, and I saw that there was an audiobook up, and I hadn't done an audiobook, and I called my agent, said she never licensed an audiobook. Somebody has put a pirated version of my book up on Amazon. So I called Scribner, the publisher of Ratio, and said, you didn't authorize this, did you? And they found out no, and they had it taken down immediately. And I wrote to this person. I didn't know who she was, in the rights department, I figured. And I said, God, if maybe there's if someone else thinks they can pirate a version, maybe we should do an audio version of Ratio for real. And she said, well, do you have anything? Maybe we'll think about it. Do you have anything to piggyback on that we could use to promote it? And I said, well, I've got this idea for a cocktail book. Can I send you a proposal? And she said, I said, I'd love to send you a proposal. I don't know who at Scribner to send it to. And she said, well, you'd send it to me. I'm the executive editor. And so through this fluke of this trying to get this pirated, because there'd been a pirated edition of Ratio, I got this book sold to the same house. And they're bringing it out as a, they're redoing the Ratio, and it's just this lovely, lucky, random story. The one thing that we have, yes, I'm really proud of this cocktail book, the Book of Cocktail Ratios, and I'm excited about this book, Cleveland Noir. Akashic does a series of noir short stories based in various cities. Dennis Lehane edited Boston Noir. Joyce Carol Oates did New Jersey Noir. There's like 150 of them. We finally got Cleveland Noir off the air. Oh, you can't see it. There we go. I forgot I've got my blur on because I live in a tiny, tiny apartment in New York City. So I've sequestered myself because my wife is also has a book out and is doing promotion as well for Fly Girl. Her name's Anne Hood. That's a great book. So Cleveland Noir is coming out in August. Book of Cocktail Ratios is coming out in this month. So those two I'm very excited about. I've got a story, it's a fictional story. I've got one in there, and some great writers who are from Cleveland contribute noir stories based in that wonderful city.